Every breakthrough we make today stands on the shoulders of lessons from the past. This isn't merely a poetic phrase, it is the fundamental architecture of progress. We see ourselves as pioneers, standing at the precipice of the future, yet every step we take forward is planted firmly on a foundation laid by generations we have never met. The challenges we face, the questions we ask, the very tools we use to find the answers, all are echoes of a long, complex, and often contradictory human story. History is not a static collection of dates and artifacts locked behind museum glass. It is a living, breathing database of successes and failures, a blueprint of human ingenuity, folly, and astonishing resilience. It is the source code for our modern world. To truly innovate, to build a future that is more just, more efficient, and more enlightened than the world we inherited, we must first become fluent in the language of what came before. We must learn to read the warnings and recognize the patterns hidden within the grand tapestry of time. Consider the very materials that shape our world. Our journey begins with steel. Before the mid-19th century, steel was an expensive artisanal product. But the invention of the Bessemer process transformed it into the backbone of a new industrial age. Suddenly, we could build higher, span wider, and move faster than ever before. Steel gave us the skyscraper, the transcontinental railroad, and the modern battleship. It wasn't just a stronger material, it was a catalyst that reconfigured society itself. This revolution in materials forced a parallel revolution in strategy. The logistics of moving millions of tons of steel by rail demanded unprecedented levels of coordination, giving birth to modern management techniques. Military strategy shifted from battlefield tactics to industrial-scale warfare, where victory depended as much on factory output as it did on generals. Today, our steel is silicon, graphene, and advanced biocomposites. The strategic challenges are no longer about managing rail cars, but about managing global supply chains, vast flows of data, and the intricate ecosystems of digital platforms. Yet the core lesson remains. A breakthrough in the physical world inevitably creates new strategic landscapes, demanding new ways of thinking, organizing, and competing. The innovator who understands the history of steel is better prepared to navigate the future of silicon. But civilization is not built on materials alone. It is built on ideas, on value systems. For most of human history, power was justified by divine right, and social hierarchy was seen as natural and immutable. Then came the Enlightenment, a radical intellectual movement that proposed a revolutionary new code for society, that individuals possess inherent rights, that reason should be our guide, and that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed. These were not self-evident truths. They were hard-won arguments that fueled revolutions and reshaped the world. The fight to abolish slavery, the campaign for universal suffrage, the global movement for human rights, these are all chapters in the long, ongoing struggle to realize the full promise of those Enlightenment values. Today, we are in the midst of another profound shift, embedding our values, or lack thereof, into the very code that runs our lives. The debates raging around algorithmic bias, data privacy, and the democratic role of social media are not just technical problems, they are philosophical battles. Are we building a digital world that champions fairness, autonomy, and human dignity? Or are we inadvertently creating new forms of control and inequality, encoded in systems too complex for most to understand? The questions posed by Locke and Voltaire in the 17th and 18th centuries are now being answered, consciously or not, by software engineers and product managers in the 21st. And how do these ideas and materials spread? Through migration. The movement of people is one of the most powerful engines of change in human history. It is the transfer protocol for civilization itself. The ancient Silk Road was not merely a conduit for luxury goods, it was a network that transmitted Buddhism, papermaking, gunpowder, and devastating plagues across continents. The European Age of Discovery was a period of mass migration that connected hemispheres, creating new empires and global economies while destroying ancient cultures and inflicting unimaginable suffering. In the 19th and 20th centuries, steamships and railways enabled migrations on a scale never before seen, as millions sought new opportunities and fled persecution, forever changing the demographic and cultural makeup of entire nations. Today, migration continues to reshape our world, but it has taken on a new parallel form, the instantaneous migration of data. An idea born in a lab in Seoul can spark a new venture in Sao Paulo in a matter of hours. A political movement can organize across borders using encrypted apps. Capital, culture, and communication now flow at the speed of light through a global network of fiber optic cables. Understanding the historical patterns of human movement, the drivers, the frictions, the cultural collisions, and the unexpected innovations, provides an essential framework for navigating the opportunities and perils of our hyper-connected present. This relentless flow of people and ideas fuels the engine of discovery, the expansion of the known world. But true discovery is not just about mapping new lands, it is about revealing new realities. The Copernican revolution did more than just rearrange the solar system, it displaced humanity from the center of the universe, forcing a profound and uncomfortable re-evaluation of our own significance. It was a psychological breakthrough as much as an astronomical one. Isaac Newton gave us a new grammar for motion and gravity, allowing us to predict the movements of the heavens. Charles Darwin revealed our deep connection to all life, showing that we are a product of a vast, ancient, and ongoing evolutionary process. Albert Einstein redefined our understanding of space, time, and gravity, opening the door to the nuclear age and the mysteries of cosmology. The process of these discoveries is a lesson in itself. It requires meticulous observation, bold hypothesizing, rigorous experimentation, and the intellectual courage to challenge dogma and embrace uncertainty. Today's innovators are the heirs to this tradition. They are peering into the dawn of the universe with new telescopes, editing the very building blocks of life with CRISPR, and exploring the inner cosmos of the human brain. The tools are immeasurably more powerful, but the fundamental human drive to ask why and what if remains unchanged. This brings us to a final crucial lesson, one that underpins all the others, the way history itself is told. Our understanding of the past is not a perfect mirror of events. It is a story, constructed from the fragments that survive, and the story changes depending on who is telling it and the tools they use. For centuries, history was the chronicle of kings, popes, and generals, a great man narrative. The lives, struggles, and contributions of ordinary people, of women, of the enslaved and the colonized, were largely rendered invisible. The 20th century brought a revolution in historiography. Historians began to use new methods to uncover the past from the bottom up, focusing on social, cultural, and oral histories. They began to ask critical questions. Whose voice is missing from this account? What power structures determined what was recorded and what was forgotten? The tools we use to record our story also shape it. The shift from oral tradition to written language, and then from handwritten manuscript to the printing press, each transformed how knowledge was preserved and disseminated. Now, we live in the digital age, where more information is created every day than in millennia past. We have the potential to create the most inclusive and comprehensive historical record ever. But we also face unprecedented challenges: the decay of digital formats, the echo chambers of social media, and the deliberate spread of misinformation. The lesson for the innovator is profound. The narrative you build around your creation is as important as the creation itself. The story you tell will shape its legacy. Steel and strategy, value systems, migration, discovery, and the very telling of our story. These are not separate subjects but interwoven threads in the single, continuous narrative of human endeavor. The past is not a distant country, it is the operating system running in the background of our modern world, influencing our choices, shaping our institutions, and defining our possibilities. To ignore it is to build on sand. But to understand it is to gain access to the ultimate toolkit for innovation. So this is our invitation. Here's a curated journey through time, designed not just to recount the past, but to unlock its lessons, to find inspiration in its triumphs, caution in its failures, and to empower the architects of what comes next. This is a journey to inspire the innovators of the future. There are materials that define an era. Stone built the ancient world, bronze forged its empires, but one material did more than build structures. It built the very framework of the modern age. Steel didn't just build cities, it built possibilities. Before its arrival, humanity's ambitions were constrained by the limits of wood, stone, and iron. Wood rotted and burned. Stone was monumental but immobile. Iron, the workhorse of the first industrial revolution, was strong in compression but brittle under tension, prone to catastrophic failure without warning. The world was dreaming bigger, of bridges that could span mighty rivers, buildings that could touch the clouds, and railways that could bind continents. But to turn these dreams into reality, it needed a new material. It needed a substance with the compressive strength of iron, but with a newfound elasticity. A material that could be trusted, With the weight of a civilization on the move, it needed a backbone. For centuries, steel was a luxury item, an artisan's secret. Produced in small, painstaking batches in crucible furnaces, it was reserved for the swords of kings, the springs of delicate clocks, and the scalpels of surgeons. It was far too expensive and scarce to be used for something as vast as a railroad or a bridge. The challenge of the mid-19th century was one of scale. How could this miracle metal be produced not by the pound but by the ton? The answer would arrive not from a seasoned metallurgist, but from a prolific English inventor named Henry Bessemer. In 1856, he unveiled a revolutionary technique that would democratize steel. The Bessemer process was deceptively simple in concept, yet profound in its impact. By blowing a jet of air through molten pig iron, the excess carbon and other impurities that made iron brittle were oxidized and burned away in a volcanic eruption of flame and sparks. In a mere 20 minutes, a multi-ton batch of iron could be converted into high-quality steel. A process that once took days was now completed in minutes. The cost of steel plummeted by over 80%. Almost overnight, the age of iron was over, and the age of steel had begun. The Bessemer process was soon joined by another key innovation, the Siemens Martin open hearth furnace. While slower, this method allowed for even larger quantities, up to 100 tons at a time, and had the crucial advantage of being able to recycle scrap iron and steel, creating a more efficient and sustainable production cycle. Together, these technologies unleashed a torrent of steel upon the world, and with this abundance, the very skeleton of modern civilization began to take shape. Nowhere was this transformation more evident than in the railways. Iron rails were soft, they wore down quickly and couldn't safely support the heavier, faster locomotives the public demanded. Steel rails, by contrast, were 10 times more durable. They made travel safer, faster, and more economical, fueling the great railway booms that stitched together nations. The Transcontinental Railroad in America and the Trans-Siberian in Russia weren't just feats of engineering, they were arteries of steel, pumping people, goods, and ideas across once impassable distances. As steel conquered the horizontal plane, it also began to conquer the vertical. For millennia, a building's height was limited by the thickness of its base. Stone and brick walls had to support their own immense weight, resulting in structures that were heavy and dark. The steel frame changed everything. Architects in Chicago and New York realized that a rigid skeleton of steel columns and beams could carry a building's entire load. The outer walls became mere curtains, protecting the interior from the elements but bearing no structural weight. Combined with the invention of the safety elevator, the steel frame gave birth to the skyscraper. Cities, once sprawling outwards, now exploded upwards, creating the iconic vertical skylines that define modernity. But this revolution wasn't just about technology. Behind every beam, behind every mile of track was a complex and often brutal human network of miners, engineers, and visionaries who reshaped the world. No one personifies the era more than Andrew Carnegie. A Scottish immigrant who arrived in America with nothing, Carnegie rose to become the undisputed king of steel. He was a ruthless innovator, not of technology, but of process. Obsessed with efficiency and cost, he pioneered vertical integration, owning the iron ore mines, the coal fields, the ships and railroads to transport the materials, and the mills to forge the steel. His philosophy was simple: watch the costs, and the profits will take care of themselves. By embracing the open hearth furnace and driving his operations with relentless intensity, Carnegie's mills outproduced the entire nation of Great Britain, the very birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. He and other titans like him were the visionaries who saw steel not just as a commodity, but as the foundation of an empire. But their empires were built on the backs of an army of anonymous workers. The steel mill was a vision of hell on earth. Men worked grueling 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, in searing heat and deafening noise. They wrestled with molten metal, dodged swinging cranes carrying tons of steel, and breathed air thick with noxious fumes. Danger was constant. A slip, a splash of liquid metal, or a mechanical failure could mean instant death or horrific injury. The mines that supplied the coal and iron ore were no better, rife with the risk of cave-ins and black lung disease. This immense progress came at a staggering human cost, leading to violent clashes between labor and capital, like the infamous Homestead Strike of 1892 at one of Carnegie's own mills. The story of steel is a story of both creation and conflict, of visionary genius and human sacrifice. By the turn of the 20th century, steel had redrawn the map of global power. Production shifted from Great Britain to the industrial heartlands of Germany's Ruhr Valley and America's Steel City, Pittsburgh. A nation's output of steel became the ultimate metric of its industrial might, economic health, and military readiness. It was the age of steel ships, steel artillery, and steel-framed factories. From the delicate lattice of the Eiffel Tower, a monument to engineering's artistry, to the armored hulls of battleships, a testament to its power, steel was the universal language of progress and strength. It had become the indispensable material that would carry the world into the tumultuous 20th century, forming the backbone for the wars, the innovations, and the societies yet to come. The American Revolution wasn't won by brute force alone. It was a chess match played on open fields and in shadowed council rooms. Every maneuver, every delay, every feint was calculated to outlast an empire. For millennia, the story of human civilization was written in gold. Its journey from a decorative metal to the very engine of global commerce is a tale of ambition, power, and an unshakable belief in tangible value. It began not with kings but with merchants in the ancient kingdom of Lydia, around 600 BC. They were the first to mint standardized coins, transforming gold from a simple measure of weight into a true currency, a universal language of trade that would echo across continents. This innovation was revolutionary. Suddenly, value was portable, divisible, and guaranteed by the state. Gold's incorruptibility and rarity made it the perfect candidate. It didn't rust or tarnish, it was a fragment of eternity you could hold in your hand. This physical permanence created a psychological permanence, a deep-seated trust that became the bedrock of economies. The Roman Empire rose on a river of gold, mined by slaves from Spain to Dacia. It paid the legions that conquered the known world, and funded the monumental architecture that proclaimed its glory. But this reliance was also a vulnerability. When the mines ran dry and emperors began debasing their currency, mixing gold with cheaper metals to stretch their budgets, they weren't just cheating the market, they were eroding the very trust that held the empire together. The fall of Rome can be measured in the declining purity of its coins. Centuries later, a new wave of gold, plundered from the Americas by Spanish conquistadors, flooded Europe. This unprecedented influx of wealth funded the Spanish Golden Age, but it also unleashed rampant inflation known as the price revolution, crippling its own economy in the long run. The gold didn't build sustainable industry for Spain, it was spent on wars and luxury, eventually flowing into the coffers of its more industrious rivals in England and the Netherlands. It built one empire while inadvertently financing the rise of others. The British Empire perfected the ultimate expression of gold's power, the gold standard. For a glorious, turbulent century, the pound sterling was defined as a specific weight of gold, creating a stable, predictable system that fueled the first age of globalization. International trade flourished, built on the certainty that paper money was just a placeholder for real, physical gold held in a vault in London. But this rigid discipline became a golden cage during the Great Depression. Nations shackled to gold couldn't devalue their currencies to combat economic collapse. The very stability it once provided now amplified the crisis, forcing countries to abandon it one by one in a desperate bid for economic survival. Gold's final act as the anchor of the world's monetary system came after World War II with the Bretton Woods Agreement. The US dollar, the currency of the world's new superpower, was made convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce. Other currencies were then pegged to the dollar. Gold was still the ultimate foundation, but at a distance, its power now filtered through the prism of American economic might. This system unraveled on August 15, 1971. Facing dwindling gold reserves, soaring inflation, and the immense cost of the Vietnam War, President Richard Nixon severed the final link. He closed the gold window, ending the dollar's convertibility and plunging the world into an age of fiat currency, money backed by nothing but faith in the governments that issue it. The age of gold was over. Its physical constraints were cast aside, opening the door for a new, infinitely more abstract and far more potent form of value to emerge. Today, data has taken its place as the currency of power. It is the 21st century's most critical asset, the raw material of the digital age. Unlike gold, which is valuable for its scarcity, data's value comes from its abundance and the insights that can be extracted from it. It's often called the new oil, but the analogy is flawed. When you burn oil, it's gone. When you use data, you often generate more data, creating a virtuous cycle of ever-increasing value. Every click, every search, every transaction, every heartbeat monitored by a smartwatch contributes to this new economy. We are all, consciously or not, mining this new resource every second of every day. The empires of this new age are not nations with vast armies, but corporations with vast server farms. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Meta have built fortunes that dwarf the treasuries of old-world empires, not by mining the earth, but by mining human behavior. Their algorithms predict our desires, shape our opinions, and guide our decisions with an intimacy and precision no monarch could have ever dreamed of. They have toppled entire industries. Blockbuster vanquished by Netflix's viewing data, traditional retail upended by Amazon's logistical and consumer data. Power is no longer held in fortified vaults but in encrypted data centers guarded not by soldiers but by legions of cybersecurity experts. And yet, the lessons of gold's rise and fall still echo in the boardrooms and trading floors of this new era. The Roman practice of debasing currency finds its modern parallel in the proliferation of low-quality data, misinformation, and deepfakes, which erode the trust that underpins the entire digital ecosystem. If you can't trust the data, its value collapses. The hoarding of gold by kings and empires is mirrored in the vast proprietary data silos held by tech giants, creating monopolies of insight and power that raise profound questions for society and regulators. The security of Fort Knox has been replaced by the challenge of digital security. The threat is no longer a physical heist, but a sophisticated cyber attack that can steal the personal data of millions, cripple critical infrastructure, or hold entire corporations hostage for a digital ransom. The old world struggled to create a stable international system based on gold. Today, we are in the midst of a similar struggle, attempting to forge global standards for data privacy, ownership, and security, as seen in regulations like Europe's GDPR. We are trying to write the rules for this new currency on the fly, balancing innovation against privacy and corporate power against individual rights. The fundamental principles of value, trust, security, and power remain unchanged. The medium has simply transformed from a precious metal forged in the heart of dying stars to intangible bits of information flowing at the speed of light. Migration is more than movement, it's transformation. Every wave of newcomers reshaped the culture, economy, and identity of the nations they entered. Scaling a company across borders follows the same truth: adapt, respect, and grow. Discovery fuels progress, from ancient navigators charting the seas to modern scientists probing the edges of the unknown. Each breakthrough expands the boundaries of what's possible. Even history needs fact-checking. Myths, propaganda, and selective storytelling have shaped public memory for centuries. In the age of AI, the stakes are higher. Credibility is currency. History isn't just about the past, it's a blueprint for building the future. Which of these lessons will shape your next big move?